people waiting.
Really?
Well, live. Hello. Welcome to the programme. I mean, I tell you what, I've learned this weekend, it's 4020 live, by the way, is that if you're a proper professional broadcaster, what you need to do is overman things, or overwoman things, over people things.
Oh, we're live.
Yeah, we are.
I have to leave my phone on.
Yeah, because we've got two special. Well, can we call James Child a special guest?
Phil's got a Uber Eats coming.
Is that when
Chinese?
Well, at least there won't be any cake left by the time it does, because you're eating it all.
John Davidson's here in
Don't
Australia?
put cake in front of me and expect it to be. Yeah.
In Australia, did you get Last of the Summer Wine?
I've heard of it. I think it was probably on an ABC rerun, but I'm not 408 years old, so I didn't watch it.
At the start of every episode,
Halifax or something.
Home first, of course.
Yeah.
At the start of every episode, it would say special guest star Dame Thora Heard, even though she was in it every.
Oh, it was one
week.
of those. Yeah.
So
I know
like
that
James
chestnut.
Child, even though he hasn't been on for a
Special
guest star James Child.
It's like Matt Damon and the Jimmy Kimmel Show. We are really sorry we didn't have time for Matt Damon every week.
This is our Halloween special, so I've got an orange T-shirt on with some wrestlers. Phil's got a nice jumper on, and John's come as the most evil and hated thing in the country, an immigrant. So welcome, John.
Odd and childish, apparently.
So that means that
You've
now
gone up in their estimation.
we can't go on the rugbyleague.com now because we've done politics. So that's a shame. You weren't there, John, but what I enjoyed yesterday was in the car back from Wigan, you seemingly live tweeting the game about 2 hours late. That was good fun, that.
Yeah, I was up in beautiful Durham, and I got home at about 4:10, and I thought I'd watch the game and make some comments.
Was it spoiler free, or did you find out what happened?
I was very, I was driving before, but I was very studious. I didn't look at anything, didn't answer any messages. Really enjoyed the game.
Didn't read the vitriol as it came.
No, which is rare. Didn't go on Facebook or anything, or Instagram, didn't look at anything. And I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought England. I think England were fantastic and deserve massive credit. Yeah, they did.
Which they didn't do against Tonga as much.
They won, Phil. I mean, we can argue. We can argue about
entertainment
tactics.
value.
Oh yeah, it was a very. I mean,
it's fighting a good job.
It's
that Harvey Farnworth offload was
started
beautiful.
well with the sippy towel.
The head. Well, we can't say a headbutt because it was more of a Liverpool kiss. A love tap.
And ended with the all-in brawl, which clearly
Scuffle.
wasn't a brawl. It was.
It was a brouhaha.
Steve Stramash.
It's always good though to start a brawl when you've been flogged and there's a minute to go and you've conceded 34 points.
And we'll ask the referee when he gets here, but I thought brilliantly handled by Liam Moore.
The scuffle or the whole game?
Scuffle. Stop being silly and.
It'd be funny if they sent loads of people off just for not doing anything.
But how was the occasion? I think I saw the crowd was 15,000, which again see people upset. But to be honest, when you look at all the circumstances of recent history, that's probably what you would expect.
I'm going to stick the boot.
You don't invest any money in an ad budget, then that's I think that's a decent.
And I think there'll be more on Saturday. Anyway.
Not that you're biased, but yes.
No, I think because they've sold out all the seats, so I think they will do that.
Have they really sold out the seats?
Well,
is that a rugby league sold out?
We were told that the wheelchair rugby league was sold out on Saturday. There weren't any seats to be had.
Yeah. No, I mean,
in fact, we had to go behind the post.
Yeah. Steve Mascott had to. He snuck in, didn't he? And then because he went to the Samoa captain's run, which no one knew about. That was good. Do you want me to tell you about the experience of being in Wigan? I mean,
tell the listeners. I've been at Wigan, so
they don't matter. They don't matter. Vote for us in the podcast awards if we get nominated. I mean, the press read was terrible. That has to be.
I did hear.
I
did hear about the food drama, but I probably shouldn't write about that because that will be treated as being. Well, apparently there was nothing to put your pasta in.
Really?
There was one.
There was cardboard
There
boxes.
was one. There was one guy who was eating it off a tissue because there was no cardboard boxes.
It wasn't that.
One of my sources suggested, but I mean,
was that Ross?
Yeah.
I've never.
I could not confirm or deny.
He was late than all of us, so that.
To be honest, the thing about the press food was I've never seen as much left, which probably tells you everything you need to know.
Generally, it is bad at most rugby league games, so that.
But it wasn't a pie in Wigan,
which is the most disappointing thing. But in other news about the whole experience in Wigan, not as much fan cam please next week because we want to see the replays on the big screen. Unless, Tanya Arnold said, you're not allowed to, because she's in charge of the BBC. And also, Do you remember that period where at every major rugby league event hosted by the Rugby Football League, Lizzie Jones would come on and do some singing?
Yes.
And everyone loved Lizzie Jones until the point where they'd seen her every single rugby league event and then they said, we're a bit bored of Lizzie Jones now. Have we been to a rugby league event in the last 15 years, listener, where there hasn't been at half-time, here's some kids dancing, to mild indifference? Because no one cares.
I'll make a comment about the anthems. Obviously, I was only watching on TV, but my partner is a professional singer, and I can't really tell if someone's a good singer or not. But apparently, the singing was, yeah. But I'm just passing on someone else's comment.
Remember
you can't sing, Phil. Apparently, so yeah.
Well,
neither
not
can
apparently. I can't. There's no apparently about it.
The Magic Weekend.
Yes.
Where we had the LDRL stuff, because it was on the middle of the pitch. You could tell the people in the crowd were engaged with it. They were cheering and what was going on in front of them. It's just, I'm bored of kids dancing. Apologies if you're a parent of a kid dancing, but
it's a good way of selling tickets, though. Come on.
Yeah. But no more, please, no more, because it's the same every time for the same music, and it's boring.
Anyway,
but you have to talk about the experience.
The other thing is, we think it's great that they put stats on the big screen.
Yeah, that was
we've been saying for ages and ages and ages.
We don't know what's going on.
It really enhances the viewing if the people in the ground can get access to how some of the players are playing.
Quick one for you.
The problem is, it's got to be in a font that you can read, and it's not got to be on so often that you can't actually see the action that's going on the pitch.
Can I add to that? Is it possible for the media to get the stats for the game, like, I don't know,
because
quicker than 15 hours after the game?
We would be able to tell more stories, wouldn't we? So
we wouldn't want to do that.
How can you give marks out of 10 if you know who actually has statistics?
Well, we all know ratings are absolute bollocks, Rich. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Player ratings are probably the worst. Well, no, they're not the worst.
I mean,
but
for once, I didn't have anything to do during the game, so I could watch the game. I couldn't tell you what any of the players got out of 10. Herbie Farnworth, 8. I don't know, but he was the best player.
He was very good.
So maybe
George Williams was very good.
Yep.
Darryl Clark, which I thought was, I mean, I spoke to someone about this today. You could argue he was a interesting selection because he did not have a good year at St Helens. Danny Walker, great year. Cruz Lehman, great year, and they're both probably different players. At Darryl Clark, he's probably not as dynamic as once was. But he had a blinder. He was very, very good at getting England on the front foot.
I did like Mikey Lewis coming on as auxiliary hooker.
Yeah. He did a good job.
Which is why I think Danny Walker wasn't.
Is he, or is it, I can't say that word. Is he a backup hooker or is he just there to annoy people? Because I think there's 50-50.
Either way,
he works. He's good at it. Yeah.
Mark couldn't read the stats either. Where were you sat, Mark?
I'm just saying it's a great idea. But it's just if you're going to do it,
like communism.
I know
in theory it works,
I need to wear glasses at games, but you couldn't read.
I was too busy I could read the clock, which is certainly something I can't usually.
Well, there's usually not a clock in a lot of games. So that's a plus.
That was really
a win.
Impressive. Yeah. We didn't come here for a lesson on communism.
I thought it was great. I thought, we're in the international programme at the moment. There's a lot gone on this weekend in both hemispheres. I thought England somehow stood up to being part of the weekend.
You would have been very happy, Kangaroos back-to-back wins. I know how much I love the Green Gold. You would have been punching the air and Chapel.
I don't know. I watched the second half of the men's game live.
I'm pretty sure I had some very happy Phil Kaplan about a year ago when New Zealand...
Because it broke the world order and that's, gets more interest in the game.
Back it up, keep reversing.
Capitalism and the Kangaroos. These are things we're smashing this
Now
afternoon.
they might be coming over here next year. We love the Kangaroos.
Which apparently has annoyed some more people.
Has it?
Why?
Well, it's Twitter, isn't it? Everyone's
why are they annoyed? What, Australians are annoyed or people here?
No, people here.
Why?
I don't know. Because they were supposed to be on in Australia, now it's changed.
Well, here's the thing.
Well, nobody could have booked the tour to Australia.
I pointed out we didn't have any venues or dates. No.
I mean, I wouldn't be going to Australia, but if I was going to,
you might if you get a passport.
It's a nice country. Really.
I know. I've seen it on telly.
He just hasn't got a passport.
No, he hasn't got a passport.
We could smuggle him in.
Yeah,
that's what used to happen.
I want to go to Papua New Guinea. I want to go to North Korea and probably the Cook Islands. But everywhere else, I'm not that bothered about. But
Iceland.
Samoa, go Samoa. Yeah. Iceland, I've been to Iceland. Just round the corner. Tonga, yeah, I got Tonga. That's what they say on Australian telly. So I'm saying it like
it's authentic.
What's that?
Tonga.
And
Samoa.
Yeah.
It's you can't say, oh, we're going to Australia next year, right? So it's less than a year away, and here's how much it could. Hang on, where's the ring? When did they book the Pacific Championships, Phil? Was it a month ago or something?
About 3 months.
After
you can't do that, can you?
Priorities, Origin first.
But they did get a sellout at Christchurch.
Yeah, that was fantastic. 17,000.
I watched
South Island's not
the
a
second half live. It was
rugby
a
league
terrific game. Did you? Aha.
You got to guess.
Guess number one.
Right. I've just been sent a pumpkin by my nephew. He's got a moustache.
That's a good carving.
You can't see that, but
I carved 2 pumpkins on Friday, and they weren't as good as that.
Well, he's multi-talented. He's got a trial at a professional club, but I don't want to mention who they are.
Wakefield Trinity.
No, it's not. This is what's really annoying about it.
But no, it was a fantastic game. Yeah. I think England deserve a lot of credit. I think they've gotten better and better in the last 2 years. It's a very good Samoan team. You look at the players they've got there. Obviously, haven't had a long camp, and they don't. History shows that perhaps the Pacific teams might not always play that well over here, but they were dominated by England. England did everything right.
Well, it's taken the Catalans 20 years to be able to play away from home. So in 2044, Samoa and Tonga,
and they're a third Antipodean and a third British. So
it's all exciting. It was a good game. It was good.
Yeah.
And now we've got to look forward to Saturday, where we assume Samoa will be better because they've had another week of.
You would think so. You would hope so.
They've been in York all week, haven't they? They've got used to the Yorkshire weather. 'Cause it's different to the Lancashire weather, or Greater Manchester or whatever. And then they get to play at one of the great homes of rugby league, Headingley Stadium. Yeah. AMT Henley's, we have to call it for legal reasons. And will Sean Wayne make any changes? I don't know.
I mean, Luke Thompson's obviously back in from his suspension, so I'd probably wager that he would be in the 17, but he's a pretty conservative coach. I think a lot of people are unhappy that Junior Nsemba wasn't in there, but I think...
Was he fit? That was the insinuation.
Well, there's concussion or non-concussion, as we probably won't go there.
Could have been.
Well, it was 2 weeks ago, Rich, so he would have passed.
He could have been diagnosed with a concussion after the game rather than during the game.
Well, I'm pretty sure he didn't move. You were in the stadium.
I was in the stadium.
Anyway, we're not brain surgeons or doctors.
We are not brain surgeons or doctors. If we were, then I'd be very concerned about the NHS.
At Harvard Med. But no, I don't imagine unless there's any injuries. I don't imagine there being any changes. I mean, it's a very strong team. There's not many players outside of that would come in. Maybe Wardle. Obviously Luke Thompson. I think he'd be in the forward rotation. But they did their jobs perfectly.
Not good enough though to beat Australia. That's what Sean Wayne said after the game. Well, I don't know if that's Sean Wayne being Sean Wayne and playing down expectations.
Well, after every game he says they have to get better. That's kind of the stock phase.
Say to George, he's got to do. I can't do his voice. I don't know. I'm trying to get back. We're going to be in the press conference on Saturday. I'll get.
You're in trouble already.
I know.
You're on the list. You're on the list.
At least I'm mates with the Samoa coach now. After my,
he's a lovely guy.
I asked him a terrible question, to which he gave me a one-word answer, which he was exactly right to do.
Did you ask him about the ruck speed or the interpretation of the ruck?
He was asked about the refereeing, and he was. I wouldn't say diplomatic. He gave the right answer. It was the referee played by the rules, and they didn't play. But
that's what the referee.
Which set of rules are we playing by?
On that, I think we all know, or anyone who watches rugby league knows, there is different interpretations in Super League compared to NRL. The ruck speed is different.
Well, we've got 3 different rules, haven't we? We've got NRL, Super League, and then we've got international.
But we've got a Super League ref. I think the referee did a very good job. I mean, you can break down every. I think the penalty count was 6-1 to England and 6 against was 4-0.
Yes.
But I think Samoa just didn't adapt to the way the ruck and England were better at the ruck.
And then none in the second half, apparently.
I think they improved in the second, but also there was that terrible when they fell asleep and the ball came through, and there was just some bad. Anthony Milford had an absolute shocker. He was charged off the line.
Is he signing for Lee yet?
Yes.
Because he's about to be coming to Lee, isn't he? Because that's what the story comes around here.
Jeez, I mean, I think Lee can do better based on that performance.
Yeah, but if they sign Anthony Milford, then we can call the League Sports Release Milf Manor, and then it's all funny. But what does Martin Coyd waltz into? That's the worrying thing. How are you, Martin?
I'm very well, thank you.
We're just moving Phil further and further away from
By the end of the programme, I will be upstairs. Which is not a bad thing.
Did you have a good weekend? Were you at the game yesterday? Or were you just there? We're just talking about that game. So did you enjoy England Samoa?
I enjoyed the game, and I certainly enjoyed some of the skills. Some of the skills were freakish, and that's both teams. Obviously the try by Dean Mariner was amazing.
That Luai created 3 times.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But I also really enjoyed Victor Radley's try, created by Farnsworth. I thought that was incredible, So, yeah, it was a good game. Good game. A bit quiet at times,
but that's international rugby league.
It is. Yeah, only one side, only one lot of supporters. So, I thought it was a good weekend.
I mean, the good thing about being in the press box is because behind you you've got all the important people. I assume you're sat in the important people bit.
Yes.
We had the Samoans in front of us. They were loud.
Yes.
I like it when they go woo like that all the time.
They were good.
It's my favourite thing.
They were good. I could hear them quite well. But I thought it was a good occasion. It was fuller than I thought it was going to be. The crowd looked quite good from where I was, and the whole of the England wheelchair team went and enjoyed watching somebody else in a white shirt. So that was good.
And got interviewed at half time by the national broadcaster.
Indeed.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And as it should be. Because I'm sure we will possibly talk about wheelchair and stuff. And I thought
just imagine if we don't talk about that at all, that'd be quite funny. Yeah.
I thought Luai was superb. I mean, I presume you've already discussed it, but I just think he's going to go up a level next week as well.
Is he going to win the Golden Boot?
I think more the problem was Anthony Milford was so bad.
Yeah.
His defensive reads were absolutely shocking. Like, he created 2 of the England tries by shooting off, exploited the space, and then you look at the kicking, and Luai did 98% of the kicking. But I mean, Luai is a freak of a player.
I'm pretty sure that Milford didn't get any Golden Boot points.
When's the Golden Boot announced?
December.
Samoa will have only played 2 games, won't they? By that point. So, can't we just take it back to what it was? Can we? Can you ask them?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Now, Martin's got more chance of getting.
Can you both ask them? Can we ask Danica? She's on one of the panels. Of which more refer to come. I can see quite a few changes for the second test, says Paul. Let's face it, the preparation for World Cup starts now, and getting more players into an international environment can only be good for the squad.
I don't think there'll be many changes. I think both coaches told us after the game that the likelihood is that there won't be many.
But that's wrong. The preparation for the next World Cup starts when the last World Cup ends. And they've been playing France twice and Tonga. That's just blatantly wrong.
Well, Martin, when did the preparation for the next Wheelchair Rugby League World Cup start, even though you didn't know where it was?
19th of November 2022. That's not true. I gave him a day off. So, have a day off and enjoy this. So the 20th we'll go, So.
But the great thing about the wheelchair, because we do like to jump about from subjects,
all over the place,
was the fact that you had a debutant who had a great story. And not only did he score 2 tries, and he was great afterwards when he was interviewed and acknowledged that this had all come very quickly and he still had some things to learn. But what a great story to tell. And if you can integrate new people to lead up to the next World Cup, surely that's what you've got to do. Because there was a hint from Sean Wayne that he hadn't picked Junior in December because he didn't feel yet he was ready to play at that level, because he'd had been flogged in training, and you've got to experience that before. And you just think, no, the way he's played this year, surely he should have been in that team.
I'm pretty sure he gets flogged in training at Wigan every week.
What do you think?
And the Mason Billington story is an example of when you do start to integrate new people and you get to see them play at that international level, and if they can take that step up.
Well, that was his 10th game in his life.
Which is amazing.
So I guess I'm part of the story in that I refereed, I was match official, his first game for Brentwood Eagles in their first game. Sort of observing this person in the middle of the park, and the harder the opposition bashed him, the harder he came back, and he's quick as well. So I pulled him and his coach after the game and said, I really think you need to think about where you're going to play, and I suggest we need to have a look at your London Roosters. And his coach was horrified that in the first game the match official had stolen his best player, but it was the right thing to do. In that he'd played basketball. He had a workplace injury on a building site 6 years ago, and part of his recovery he played basketball, and it's okay, he enjoyed himself, but he didn't love it because he was one of these tough rugby union flankers when he was playing.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got a rugby ball in his hands in a chair, he said it all came back to him. What he does do, he's got such a long way to go, but what Mason does do is he thinks like a rugby player. So his lines are good, and his communication's good as well. So, and that's what's accelerated him a bit more than it may have done for another wheelchair athlete. So, yeah, it's a great story, and there was a great moment with his father, and Mason. His father presented him his cap on Saturday after the game, and we had a quiet moment. He said, "I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm going to break down." I said, "Just break down if you want to." I said, "That's fine too." So it was very touching.
The scorer of the winning try in the 2025 when's the World Cup? 26.
6, yeah.
World Cup final. Might not even know yet. It's like those adverts during lockdown from the government. If you're a ballet dancer retraining, fixing people's computers, the next wheelchair rugby league superstar, it could be you. Could be you out there. We don't know. We don't know.
That's a really fair statement, and as well as a great test, or a good test. It wasn't as as intense and as close as recent test matches have been, but playing France is always tough, full stop. But in the morning we had what we call England Futures. We had juniors, which were 12 to 16, and women, all ages. And I said to both sets of players before, I said, you might be playing in the World Cup, and if you're not there, certainly the 29 World Cup, it could be you. And and I was able to explain the sort of short pathway that some of the current internationals have had. It's a very young side in what can be, it can be a 30-year career. Gilles Closel played, I think he's 60.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't look it though. He doesn't look it.
No.
He must keep you young. Playing rugby league keeps you young. This is the new thing. Forget Botox and hair transplants or whatever. It's just sitting in a wheelchair and playing. It's the future. Danica, as mentioned, says, Mark, are we going to mention Danica off the telly dropping the conversion in the crowd at the wheelchair game, by the way? Yes, we are.
Yeah, because she mentioned it.
Yeah.
With horror.
I mean, we missed it because we were sat at the other end in the danger zone.
We were trying to avoid being run over by Rob Hawkins.
Twice, I think we nearly got run over. The bit where the barrier came towards us, that was concerning, but we're okay. We have survived. Let's drop the ball, apparently. That's no good, is it, for a former international rugby player? She won't be in the next World Cup squad. That's, I think that's fair to say. It was a good afternoon in Wigan.
We had 2 afternoons in Wigan.
I know.
Wigan overload we had.
When we eventually found the venue, that was good. She wasn't even a VIP there on Saturday. Didn't even get the VIP treatment we did with the food and the
She had a
drink.
Marks and Spencer sandwich instead. Yeah. Out of the BBC fridge.
Pink wristband. It was a good. We need to bend your ear about Freya Levy. You need to tell Mr. Coyd, the other one, get her in that squad
for Spain. He wants a heritage number.
It's watching the ice hockey.
It's not giving anything away.
No. Well, we had a great moment. I was at the Hall of Fame. I had the privilege of being at the Hall of Fame.
Oh, you'll have to tell us how that
dinner on Tuesday, and
also in Wigan.
Yes, and
centre of the world.
Dave Woods made an announcement between the first course of honey and bargees and the main course of chicken that he was delighted that the women's coach and captain Stu Barrow and
there's another guest at the door.
And Stu Barrow and Jodie Cunningham were in the crowd, which got some applause. And he said, and we've got the England wheelchair coach Tom Coyd, and probably had a look around and saw me, and he said, and Tom's dad's here as well, Martin, which nobody applauded. So I spoke to Dave afterwards. I said, listen, I am not Tom Coyd's dad. He said, oh, I thought you were. I said, well, I am, but I'm also a person in my own right. So please refer to me as Martin in the future. So.
I mean, I'm just Phil Psychic half the time, and that's the worrying thing about this programme, is we get everyone in trouble.
Apparently Jamie Peacock did a very moving speech when he received his cap at the dinner.
He did. The whole thing was moving. Actually, it was a real privilege to be there.
The lionesses.
Yeah, and you couldn't have got two different characters in the women's with Michelle Land and Jane Banks, and Jane is this still statuesque superwoman who looks like she could still play.
Boys heritage.
Hi, Martin.
Hi, James.
What were the RFL branding thing?
Oh, don't talk about this.
I thought you were retired. Are you coming out of retirement?
Yeah.
I
here first.
I need to finish this. So
You finish this story.
so Jane and very eloquent in sports development, and then Michelle was just incredible as well, but in a very different way. And the story of a group of women from 1996 who were unfunded and unsupported and had nothing, making their way and winning 6 out of 7. It was just incredible, and the warmth in the room. I know this warmth thing has been coming for some time, since the women first attended a Lions lunch one Sunday in January somewhere, and it's growing, driven by Julia Lee and driven very well by Julia Lee. But some of the footage of the way Jane Banks and Michelle Land were playing was
Jane Banks, who was 16 at the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So it was a great night, and Scully and JP spoke incredibly well, and I missed the first bit, but Eric Prescott and James Lomas, Alan Prescott and James Lomas, I'm told, were great stories and well received.
Is there that, because everything's buzzwords and stuff, within the England setup, men, women, wheelchairs, does it feel like one family on the inside?
So we're not some sort of homogenous blob type thing, but I'm happy to share that I asked Sean Wayne to present the England wheelchair shirts on the Friday night, which he did after he'd finished his job, and he came in and I made Sean a cup of tea, and then the door opened and there was Sam Tompkins standing there, which was a surprise to me, but he was Sean's driver, and I said,
So that's what he does.
Yes. Why was he dressed in the same colours as the referees yesterday?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently he was on the field a lot.
Oh, that's what trainers colours
wear. Well, that's what trainers do now. They organise the defence,
but
don't
the
they?
referee's kit was exactly the same as, to be fair, the Samoa and the England.
Well, people have always thought he was refereed anyway.
Well, that was a story that wrote itself, but
Yeah.
you would have thought somebody might have checked that the water carriers had a different coloured t-shirt.
So to answer your question, they
You know how this podcast
welcome to the
works.
programme. You listen to it every week. You know how this works.
They freely gave us 120 minutes of just spontaneous, very, very candid, open, people asked them questions and shared what was important to them and their great experiences, and said a lot of things that none of us would have thought of. You know, Sam Tompkins talked about the most valuable player in his current team, and it wasn't who I thought it would be. And just sharing that type of thing, which was very important to the guys. And there's a bond between wheelchair and women as a sort of junior teams within the setup. So,
and this is something Kevin Sinfield set up when he was in charge. This overriding, if it's going to be about an elite performance department, it has to include everybody.
Correct.
Which is good to see.
Yep.
What happened to him?
Kevin?
It's been nice, honestly.
It's a one club mentality at international level, which is exactly what it should be.
Yeah, I believe he's staying on at England. He has a role with England in...
No, he's going to be at the 7-4-5 game in a fortnight's, 3 weeks' time, which we're looking forward to.
Could be the future. James, how are you? We haven't seen you for ages.
Good, thanks. Yeah, no, sorry. Fleeting.
Well, it's okay.
Although, I've been called some things in my time, but to be compared to Thora Hurd...
Supposed to listen on the way in, that's it.
No, good, thanks.
The handling of the brouhaha at the end of the game yesterday.
Oh, it was something nothing, wasn't it?
But wasn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
Didn't Liam do exactly the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely. There was nothing to really deal with, was there? Really, just push and shove. There's only so many times you can have that in a game, though, before you have to.
And
do
a minute
something,
from time,
but,
just cool it down.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, James, because someone asked me this, and I thought I knew the answer, but I could be wrong, about the love tap between Gordon and Mikey Lewis and the war dance, whether someone could be sent off or sanctioned before the game actually starts.
I mean,
that could be a technical. I mean, not that there was really anything in it. It was just a touching of heads, but I know my brother, who was a football referee years ago, got sworn at when I think it was an under-15s game. But he did give someone a red card after the game, which I think works. But before,
I've heard of that before. But I would imagine that you probably could be actually. But I think I did a test. I think I was on the line for a test. I think it was at Brisbane where it was Australia New Zealand, and they walked right up to the place. And the crowd just lifted, and it was a special moment. It was probably one of the best moments in the game actually. So I missed that because I only watched the game last night on Opta to review it, but I saw it at half time as I was flicking through. I saw it and I thought it would have been really special.
Yeah, I thought it was a great moment. I mean, obviously they barely touched. It wasn't like there was a headbutt. It just added to the drama and the spectacle.
He took it in the spirit in which.
Yeah, I think they both did.
They both did it. It was much each other, and it's great. It gets people excited. It gets people talking.
It gets millions of people interacting on social media, and it might even tempt a few to go to the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
So
I think it'd be a better game.
For me.
I think Samoa will be better this week.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, they proved that in the World Cup, didn't they? You know, probably
slight improvement from game 1 to game 2. I need to ask one of the Samoans on Saturday how long it takes them to learn the Sibatau. Because you can't just it's not like passing the ball or whatever, isn't it? You must have to learn and make
practice.
Sure right, yeah.
Well, that's why Freddie Tuilagi is with them and Willie Poachie. They are cultural attaches.
Well, I know with the haka in New Zealand, kids do it in school. They learn it, but obviously this is a different.
I mean, we did country dancing, which was not.
You did Morris dancing, didn't you?
We
did the nut bush.
But the England team, if it wanted something similar, should after the Sivatau should bring on a maypole and dance around it, because that would intimidate.
I don't want to talk about pole dancing. This is dangerous route. There's a bit of pushing and shoving in the wheelchair game on Saturday as well. Rob Hawkins causing a bit of bother throwing the ball, and that was almost fun.
It's something we talk about and something we think about the guys, looking out for one another, and that quite, forgive the pun, but we're not going to be pushed around by anybody.
And of course, last year in the game in France, he was involved in quite a dangerous incident, not of his making.
Well, that game in France in Marseille, we actually played on polished concrete, which I noticed it immediately, as did the team doctor. And he had a pretty tense 80 minutes, and the fear is that we get very few injuries in wheelchair rugby league outside of thumbs and wrists type thing. We don't have the collision that you do in the running game, but the one that you can't control is coming out of a chair. But athletes at this level can tend to sort of almost like a judo roll out of it. They tuck their heads in and can put themselves in the position when they're thing. But yeah, Rob was pulled out of his chair from behind, which is obviously a bit of a no-no. But it's rugby league in a wheelchair, and if you're on a sprung floor. So the one we played on is a clicked together plastic one, but underneath it are tennis courts. So there's a bit of cushioning to the blows, and it makes a hell of a difference when you've got just a little bit of give in the floor.
Do you speak from personal experience, Martin? Have you been in a wheelchair and done it yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like doing
it. You want to, don't you? You actually say.
You're putting words in my mouth here.
Right wing. Are you loose forward or middle?
Oh,
what would you prefer to be? Pivot. You don't pivot or middle. Which would you prefer?
I can pass off both hands, so
pivot, middle. I was a winger, obviously, so I'm on the right wing. Yeah, so that makes sense. So Phil's on the left wing. I'm on the right wing. That's how podcasts work. Yeah.
So, and I know this is causing some interest with people. When I started, everyone just talks about D's and ABs. So I'd said pretty quickly, I don't want to hear this AB stuff. It's a rank in the Navy, and we're not able-bodied seamen or anything like this. So I got it to disabled and non-disabled, and after a while, and that's all people talked about. So I introduced pivots, middles, and edges, and Tom Coyd and Dave Banks have now evolved this. So the middle three players are pivot, loose forward, and middle,
which is like your spine.
Absolutely. And then obviously wingers are the strike players and the quick guys, and some of the best players can play sort of all four positions, and others are quite fixed on one or couldn't play as a middle. That tends to be. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of Adrian Morley there. He'd have been a great middle in wheelchair rugby league. So.
Whereas Rob is an out-and-out winger.
Absolutely, and wasn't he good on Saturday?
First half was unplayable. But that was really interesting, getting that information just before the kick-off about they were now going to be positionally identified rather than numerically identified. Aids the understanding of the game to another level. So I think rolling that out going forward, people will understand how that translates from running game positions to wheelchair game positions. It made so much sense. We only got the information literally before kick-off, but you suddenly look at formations completely differently. And long may more information be available to the watching public.
Oh, I've taken that on, and we'll make sure that happens. And just things in programmes or available online before games will be really important.
It's great. And once people who are covering the game know that, and you start using that terminology, then it will make more sense to those who do bother to read match reports.
Yeah, and I can assure you...
Both.
Hang on, I've got to read...
All three of them.
I'll just read Phil's match report while you're
No, I wouldn't bother.
What's next for Wheelchair Rugby League domestically then, in terms of the structure and number of teams? Have you got more teams coming in to the competition?
We issued invitations with a grading guide, so it's not a grading like IMG. It's more of a minimum standards guide.
Okay.
Around what your facilities are and your governance of the game, which is critical. And we're going to expand to 8 teams next year, and I personally would love to see, let's just call them out of area teams. That'll make sense. So I'm hoping that Edinburgh will put a bid in. They've made a strong start and reached the Challenge Shield final, which surprised everybody, but they've got a former Leeds coach in Martin Gill.
Who's now the Scotland coach.
Correct. And what I believe Wheelchair Rugby League has the ability to do, and this has been quite difficult for me, who's been on the wrong end of rugby union bigotry for quite a long time in the South and in the Army and other forces. There isn't an equivalent of rugby union to what we do, so I genuinely think it can be wheelchair rugby. And wouldn't it be great if we had a South West and a South Wales, Scotland, North East, Cumbria, West Midlands, East Midlands team? So if you are a wheelchair athlete, disabled or non-disabled, in any part of the UK, you've got a reasonable travelling distance to play in Super League. And we really can take wheelchair rugby league truly national. I don't need to sell it to you guys what a great spectacle it is. And at the equal another end of the wheelchair rugby league spectrum, some very disabled people play it, which is also unique in the same team. So we'll do that. We'll expand the championship. We'll continue to provide regional opportunities. The junior and the women is really, really exciting. So the French could see obviously the juniors and the women, and they said to me, so I just said, ready when you are, about the women's, and they said, we only have 6 players. I said, you only need 5. You can have a substitute as well. And they, the conversation already in France is, let's play a women's international against England, and I'd love it for the Irish and the Scots and the Welsh to get involved as well. And whilst we wish to remain the most inclusive sport in the world, where anybody and everybody can play in a World Cup, I also think providing opportunities, and what I've seen, which has not been, I don't immediately get it, this all women environment is different, and I've learned from a sports scientist, if you put a lot of men in a competitive environment, they begin to compete with one another as well, whereas the women tend to support each other whilst being competitive, and they have this very, very quick bonding thing that goes on. So I think to answer your question, juniors, women, expansion of Super League to 8 teams, and then I'll give you a pause on this and let you talk about some other types of rugby league. But well, I'd like to talk about the Wheelchair Rugby Premier League at some point before the end of today's show.
I think the other thing is that's the domestic dimension, which is exciting, and it's taken a little bit of time to build on the World Cup success, but it is starting to do that. The other thing is the international dimension, that next week New Zealand playing their first competitive game against Australia. We now know the dates that England are going out, not just to play a return match against France, but they're playing Spain. while Ireland are also there at the same time playing France. And I think that ability for nations to see how important this, we're probably not going to crack the running game quickly in America, but we certainly could crack the wheelchair game very quickly through their veterans and through the fact that obviously there isn't anything similar in their sporting environment for wheelchair users. And I just think that the world is rugby league's oyster where wheelchairs going, and it just needs a bit of a financial push when people realise the doors it can open.
That was going to be my question about money. Where's the money coming from to support some of the
money is in the chairs, isn't it? That's where the cost is. But I don't know of any government that won't support into whatever their equivalent of Sport England is, so Sport Germany, if such a thing exists, that wouldn't be looking to put money into this kind of a sport because there's nothing else that they can get behind for people who are disabled, but also to allow able-bodied people to play with the disabled. And I just think that that's the key, and it needs some kind of international coordination to just unlock a few more doors. I know there's a lot of Eastern European nations, talking to the likes of Serbia and Ukraine. Sadly, Ukraine getting more and more people who are obviously going to be in wheelchairs with everything that's happening at the moment. They are really keen now that they've seen it to say, how do we start it? And the great thing is you only need, as you say, 6 people to start it.
Got a question actually for Martin, something that people have sort of pointed out on social media and debate, and this could be a very stupid question, so I apologise in advance it is, but people are asking why the wheelchair season that it is now, why is it not played over winter? Because obviously we've got a lot of fixture congestion. We had the wheelchair game on Saturday, we had the England men test, and then same with the Super League Grand Final. From a media point of view, it doesn't actually allow free space to kind of report on both for the press pack. That's not the only reason, but yeah, I guess is there a reason why the season is, or could a winter season work in terms of perhaps getting men's and women's fans of the women's game, men's and women's game fans to more wheelchair games or vice versa?
So I have to take personal responsibility for part 1 of your question, in that my obsession that I wanted it to be rugby league in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Instantly recognisable with the rules and laws of the game and the techniques and the culture and all that. And that included following the Super League season and playing in those months. When Tony Sutton took over as CEO, he and I met in a cafe in Leeds to have a conversation. And he said, why do we play in summer? I said, surely this is the perfect sport for winter.
Because it's indoors as well, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Steve Mascard wrote a brilliant article after an England-France test match. And he said, I've seen the future of rugby league. It's indoors. You can play it any time you want. So there is a really strong move that we may go to. What I will say, Phil mentioned the expense of the chairs. The other expensive thing is the cost of halls. And we need a fairly big hall for you can play in a school hall for your sort of community stuff and your training, but your bigger games and certainly your test matches, you need a large venue, which get very expensive. And we'll also be competing with all the other indoor activities that go on. But if we're in early enough, there's no reason why. So your question, John, is well founded, and I think you will see in the next couple of years we would move to winter. And the TV audiences are good. The lads have been sending me stuff today. Very early this morning, Bashara's try, the one when he got knocked out of his chair, has had 2.2 million somethings.
It's near 6.
Right, 6 million people have looked at it. So there's clearly an interest in what we do, and I think there's an opportunity to have our version of rugby league as a entertainment, both live and on TV.
I've got a list of things in my head that I need to get in before we talk about something else. 1, I've forgotten them. Wheelchair hacker, that will go viral because people love hackers, so that will work next week. 2, Amanda Wilkinson said women are different to men and you have to coach them differently at the start of the season, not just physically. But speaking to Freya Levy on Saturday before she went back to Norway to play more ice hockey because she's completely mad, she wants to play against men. We're not going to argue with Jodie Boyd-Ward because she'll run us over and she'll say the same thing. But if it's like the darts where you've got the open PDC, but also they've got the women's tour as well. So if you don't want to play against the men, you can play against women. And finally, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, if you have these wheelchair rugby league teams in random places where there isn't the running game traditionally, they might accidentally start watching the running game. We might actually accidentally use wheelchair rugby league to find new people to watch rugby
sponsors
league.
come on board and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anything like
How
that.
did we talk about that?
That's all the things I wanted to say, so you can talk about whatever you want now.
But the reason I say we're the most inclusive, Freya won't mind me talking about it. In basketball, Freya has one as her allocated points for her, I forget what they call it, classification. So her job in basketball is to block people and nobody passes to her. So she doesn't really touch the ball very often. She just moves around and blocks people. Whereas in rugby league, she's exactly the same as all the other players: catch, pass, push, tackle, and has to do the same things and loves it for that reason. And you know, all the women who played in the match on Saturday could play open rugby league, if we're going to call it that. So. Yeah,
fancy coming back and refereeing wheelchair rugby?
I've been asked actually, and the thought of suggesting that to Stephen, I think he would kill me.
Well, you don't have to get in a wheelchair, you just run along the side.
No, it just takes up a load more time. Time that is one thing that I don't have currently.
Well, just imagine it.
If we're going to winter.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's 12 months.
Nobody sells houses in winter.
12 months of rugby league. That's it.
Well, you're not. Yeah, we've got three houses that are launching on Boxing Day. It's the busiest day on Rightmove.
Well, there you go.
There you are.
The Boxing Day sales of houses. I'm sure it was something else I was going to mention then, but I've completely forgotten what it was. So it can't have been important. And then I'll remember at the end of the programme.
Can I just ask about the numbers? So, obviously everybody watching the World Cup, and it really sort of took the public's imagination by storm in the World Cup. So how have the participant numbers, changed since then?
Just remarkable. So when it first started, there were two clubs, Halifax and Wigan and Lee Borough, whatever that was. We've exploded more than double since the World Cup. We've got 40 clubs now. Yeah. I once had great joy. So Nigel Woods once said to me that rugby league is played in every county in England apart from Herefordshire. I said, what about Hereford Harriers then? He said, what are they? I said, they're a wheelchair rugby league team. So we've got 40 clubs and over 60 teams playing. And the numbers are through the roof, and we've got about 90 odd registered women, just women. So just growing exponentially, and every reason that we'll carry on doing so.
Batley this week launched.
Batley played Salford and we're winning at half time, and we're within 4 points at the end. Last play of the game stuff. So Batley, Wakefield and Castleford. We're going to come up with something like a mixture between the rhubarb triangle and the heavy woolen. So
which you can do with you don't have to follow the running template.
Heavy rhubarb championship or something like this but just great people having a great time.
And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you're here. So it would be foolish not to ask it. Allocation of resources. If you go purely on raw participation numbers and you've got a minimum amount that you can put into each strata of the game, you would give wheelchair rugby league less than every other part. But actually, you've got to turn conventional logic on its head and say, because this is growing at the speed that it is, and you can make such a difference in such a short space of time, shouldn't we be allocating more resource to wheelchair rugby league?
I'll go back to my meeting with Tony Sutton, the first wheelchair and new CEO meeting, and I was quite excited, and he just said, you're 0.5% of the playing population, exactly. And you're batting way above your weight. What I would say with resources, as a result of the efforts of the development department, I'm going to name check John McMullen and Mark Loverin and Chris Godfrey, and the Rugby League World Cup Legacy Fund. 400 chairs have been put into the communities, which is just amazing. And the manufacturers, both Roma and RGK, have helped out with this, so that barrier was taken away. So I think we are punching above our weight and receiving above our weight as well. And this ambition of regional hubs and teams that are not, there's nothing wrong with being associated with a Super League club, but if we just replicate what already exists, that for me would not be success. And I was in a meeting and somebody said, let's try and get 5,000 people in an arena by 2030. I said, we've done that. let's do the O2 or that new place that Harry Styles owns in Manchester. It's called the Co-op Arena, I think. That's where we should be going. And no one's ever said to me, coming out of a wheelchair match, that was all right.
That's what we said on Saturday.
Everybody just goes, I can't believe what's just happened, and is this legal? Is anybody here against their will? There was a thing that went around the wheelchair team this morning. It was a quote of somebody called Mr. Turnip something or other, and it was like, were these guys disabled before they started, or is it a result of playing this game? So just fantastic in that way, and I don't even think about the quality of the product. I'm frightened about where we might get to. It's 3 times faster than conventional rugby league, 3 times as many play the balls. So if you see a great game, the World Cup final was 28-24. That's like 9-2 at Old Trafford. It's one of those type of games, and anything under 30, you're looking at an exceptional competition for the amount of time the ball's in play.
We were frightened when the tyre burst on.
Well, yeah, that was exciting. I do like it when the RFL retweet that trying, because you can just have to watch Tom Hollywell score the World Cup winning try again and again and again. They've launched the RFL's Community Trust. Is that what it's called, Phil? Yeah. All about social inclusion and stuff. So, well done, Joe Burgess. And well done, Warrington, if they employ Hulk Hogan. So that'll be good. Noted racist Hulk Hogan. IMG, Phil. John, it's done. It's done. IMG, we're grading it's happened.
Have you kicked them out?
Well, because wait for the now grading in perpetuity. We're never getting kicked out of Super League again now. Other than Cass, you can't get rid of us.
Them and Leeds.
Like cockroaches, us, Cass, Leeds, you can't get rid of us. Hull FC, though, they're rubbish. They're out. That's gone. Just for our Hull KR fans listening. How did you find the whole reaction, experience?
I think it's been an interesting 5 days. I think general movements, we knew Wakefield were going to go up. We knew London were...
Well, we knew that on Tuesday when people were telling us what was going to happen, which was interesting. But
more leaks than the Titanic in rugby league. But we knew generally movements of sub-clubs. I think the reaction has been interesting because I've spoken to a lot of different people, and I think, not every club, but the vast majority of clubs are not happy.
Some don't want to speak to you, John. That's the problem.
Well, that's true. And there's a lot of people in there. I think a lot of fans are unhappy. There's a lot of questions. I think if you look at the grading criteria and what's happened, it is licensing by the name, and you could say it's watered down licensing. You could say it's particularly harsh. I think there's a lot of people who are coming from there. Well, I'm a Salford fan, and this, whatever. But looking at it independently, I don't think necessarily where we're going or what IMG has done so far has made a big impact.
It's a 12-year.
It is a 12-year partnership.
We're in, what, year 3 now?
Yeah, we're about 2.5 years in.
And you would assume that the grading criteria will move with time, because obviously...
Well, it changes every year, so people sort of getting outraged at Castleford or Wakefield, if they don't continue, then they will lose their spot, much like Hull FC. Yeah, but I think the whole kind of, you can look at it many different ways, but the whole sort of, one of the takeaways reported afterwards, well, we could have a 14... We won't have a 14 Super League.
Phil wants 10. He's kicking 2 out.
Well, I think John Wilkin.
And Derek Beaumont. Did you say 10, Phil? Or have I come...
Yeah,
because Derek Beaumont...
We were just talking about how it's fine having grading, but is that going to raise the playing standard? It's raising the standard of the clubs. No. And there are a lot of clubs that have taken on board a lot of these grading criteria. They are already becoming better clubs.
But some of them were already doing that before IMG were appointed.
Some of them, but I think having that template actually sets it out.
Which we had before.
And I think a lot of the people who complained about a very small percentage of it. So if you're, and I'm going to just use them as an example. I'm not holding them up to anything. If Doncaster say we should have had 0.2 and 5 points more because our television gantry is virtually up to spec, the fact is that's fine. We can argue about that 0.25. What are you doing about the 19.75? So, London is a classic example. London were using the card.
They don't have their games televised. What do they need a gantry for?
They're
not going to be in Super League ever.
Well, they might be.
No. Come on, Rich.
But it's a
Let's be
template,
serious.
isn't it? If you want to be in
it's a
Super,
template.
and if they have,
it's not reimagining rugby league.
No, but
though,
I mean,
is
I think the people that have complained the longest and the loudest have been about very small grading criteria rather than where do we fit in the whole package. So, for example, I was just saying London, they were graded, and nobody did change their grade because they're only indicative grades to start with. So the grade they've got now is the grade that they've got. So all of those people that went up and down and 5 teams that have got better or worse, no, they haven't. This is the first time they've been graded. London knew that they weren't probably going to be in Super League, but they've taken on board the fact that they've managed to move 10 places and reckon they are now 2 years off potentially being back in
could
Super
be dead in a week, Phil.
But I think
they don't have an owner unless they find
thing,
800 grand. It's immaterial.
The whole thing is about sustainability, and they have got more chance of getting an owner if they say, if you put your money in and we can hit these now agreed grading targets, we will be in. But and I think that's a way of encouraging investment.
Sustainability is also, when they look at the finances, is your owner putting in loans or writing them off. So all of those clubs, the vast majority, are losing money. And again, so they're not necessarily sustainable in the current guise.
The argument that we very nearly lost out to Toulouse, but you need to, your ground's going to be fine, but you need to look at your financial model. You do need in this day and age of professional sport to have some kind of financial plan that evens the risk across.
Leeds lost money, St Helens lost money, exactly. Wigan lost money, Warrington lost money.
How many sporting clubs make money though?
But
that's a good point.
Do they have the ability to loan money? And they do, whereas some clubs clearly financially don't. And I think that what these grading criteria have given them is a reason to be a sustainable club. I think York are following it. They're a great example. I think Keighley, for all of their opposition to the consequence of grading and how it might affect them, are putting out press releases saying, maybe this is actually giving us an indicator as to where we need to be.
Well, it makes it transparent in a way, doesn't it? If you can tick boxes.
But it's never going to be perfect, and those boxes will change.
I don't think anyone expects it to be perfect, but you've got clubs who aren't even submitting criteria. I mean, the fact that you've got to...
What does that tell you about those clubs and their viability as semi-professional? I don't disagree
with that, but the point is they've made a system that's supposed to be for everyone, but the reality that no one wants to admit is the top tier isn't for everyone. That can't actually happen.
Yeah,
it's a completely nonsensical idea.
But isn't that realism?
But the
people don't want to admit the realism, Phil. Well, I don't think they had much. I don't think they had much choice, in that.
They could abstain or.
Well, some did, but I think there was a point where it was like, well, we don't have any ideas. This is what we're going to do, and that's where we are.
But the interesting point raised about it won't go up to 14. That IMG might want to have 20 clubs, but
they don't have the power
unless the clubs vote.
That's the other thing.
That's the flaw. So everybody is pointing the finger at IMG. It's like, there's only a limit to what we can do within the realms of you allowing us to do it.
That's the point. They wanted to get rid of Magic Weekend. We still have Magic Weekend. They wanted to get rid of loot fixtures. We still have loot fixtures. I'm not blaming IMG for all the games but a lot of people are.
And maybe the big flaw for IMG last week was we didn't hear anything from them.
Well, no one turned up.
Marketing company, and they didn't have a spokesman.
Yeah, they haven't really done an interview with any media entity for a year. I mean, what does that tell you? So, they're a marketing consultancy. They're not really marketing anything.
So, but when the next television deal comes around, if they can get an increase in that, then that's how they'll make a greater percentage of money out of the game, because they'll be on I think they are.
Supposedly the only money they were going to make, and now they're getting an annual fee though.
They've already taken 1.2 billion out of the game.
So in terms of London, for example, London Roosters got the name London. London Broncos got the name London. No connection between them. Grown up independently of each other. If grading criteria was to push those two arms together and there could be an accommodation, is that something that might move the game forward in London and the South?
There was a very short discussion when the IMG gradings came out, because I think wheelchair would be quarter of a point. It's sort of like having a long TV gantry.
But under the Community Foundation, which London Broncos have now taken control of, where most wheelchair teams are sat is in the foundations or clubs. Is it a longer term aim that perhaps those two disparate bodies could come together?
I wouldn't rule anything out, but there has to be sort of mutual contributions. And London had a period, and I was chair of the junior league down there for this period, and Brian McDermott was extremely active, and he was seen all over every community club and was helping with coaching and things. And then that just stopped, and the talented players who came through the system came through in the sort of Phil Jones era. I don't know what year Phil moved to Warrington, 2017, something like that. And the pathway stuff is nowhere near where it was, because it was enormous. At one stage we had 40 odd junior teams playing and 1,600 registered players, lots of match officials, etc. You know, coaches on pathways, and you know, they used to call them coach moderations, just to give people whereas all of that's collapsed.
But does grading concentrate the mind to say we need to bring that back, or bring it under an umbrella whereby it works for everyone?
Some good people at the Broncos who've sort of tried, but they just don't have the resources. And that situation I've just described, when London Junior League was very powerful, there was also 20 plus RFL staff on the ground
Development office
in London, and now there are none, zero. So that sort of engine driving it and creating competitions and connecting, joining the dots, if you like, is not there anymore.
I think that was one of the criticisms of IMG, one of their first press conferences. London is a sleeping giant. It's a special market. What have they done in London? They haven't done anything. And I think the question would be, you know, you're based in the market. I lived there a long time ago. It seems like there's a lot of, you know, well-intentioned people doing different things. But should there not be a strategy, a task force, however you want to put it, for London, for the whole market, or for the South even? Okay, we're going to do this. We might reshape the Broncos a new brand, or we're going to connect these dots and invest some money. You know, I'm not saying, well, we don't have any money, but yeah, say the 450 grand that's going to IMG. You know, does the RFL need to say, okay, we need to put this money into the London market over a 5, 10 year, 20 year period?
So there's a bit of a restart, a bit of a reboot. So I coached with Kevin Rudd the London rep team, which was players from all of the adult clubs bar Hammersmith. You have to be eligible to play for England to play in the London rep team. So, and it's really positive. We come together, we take down the tribal, you know, barriers and things, and that was positive. And also I've been asked to chair a meeting of what we might do to start connecting. I've got some ideas which might sound like IMG gradings, but every club in the London member league would have to have primaries, juniors, open age, and take your pick from masters, women's, and provide something in hubs. That doesn't mean we wouldn't get, and this is the wrong description, but you'll know what I mean when I say pub teams, hugely valuable things, but they're no interest in running around on a Saturday morning with primary school kids. So we've got to find a model where you can have these multi-tiered clubs playing alongside pub teams, and often you'll get a junior team that will go right through with one particular age group, and then you never see them again. So there's got to be a place for them, but it's not the same as... So the idea for mine would be geographical again, that we might have 4 teams north of the Thames, 4 clubs north of the Thames, 4 south. We all play each other, and we have some sort of playoff and pathway, but include the single team clubs as well. So we're talking about it, and there is no doubt that, you know, if professional rugby league, because let's not forget we lost the Scholars and Hemel, who had a...
I was going to point that out.
Yeah. So what's happening now is people are saying, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
I fancy my chances, you know, what can I do? And we've got plans for that. So I'm hoping to... I've had a conversation with Trevor Hunt that maybe the SCL champions play the NCL champions, and Hammersmith Hills Hoist are a remarkable football team, but they've never put... I don't know if this is still true, but a couple of years ago, their proudest thing was they'd never put the same 17 people on the field twice. such as this sort of throughput of Australians.
I was going to say they must do a mean haka. They're mostly Kiwis, aren't they?
The Hoists are Aussies.
Oh, are they? Okay, I'm thinking of someone else.
That's the Warriors.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
So
they're probably flying off to Latvia every second week or
yeah,
Croatia or something on holiday. Yeah,
and it's what they do, and they train on Clapham Common. Their emblem is a washing line called.
It's a famous piece of washing machine equipment. Yeah.
In Australia, I'm told we don't celebrate washing lines.
Well, I don't know. It's just an iconic thing that everyone's backyard has a Hills hoist that will wash your clothes out of it. Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So there is.
So it's promising.
There's good people. There's good rivalries, but we're talking to each other, and we understand that sitting around and waiting for someone to come over the hill and say, "Here's some stuff," is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
but going back
we'll do
to
it ourselves.
the grading, I do think it's concentrated minds, and I do think that for all of the unbelievable largesse of David Hughes, it may take him withdrawing and leaving the club debt-free and leaving people like you to talk about what do we do in London and the South and have a pathway that might end up back at a differently owned Broncos. I think all of this grading actually encourages that kind of talk rather than necessarily seen as preventing London from being in Super League, which just became a headline for a little while. Listening to Mike Eccles, who clearly is staying on and is from the kind of background that it's a Brian McDermott kind of a guy that he's not a head coach specifically. He's into performance and pathways. That I think him staying on and almost becoming the public face of the semi-professional club starts to open doors to say the conversations we couldn't have, we now need to have. And yes, we need some money behind us. We need some new investors to come in, which I'm told there are people at least inquiring. And I think that's quite positive, rather than look at it and just say, well, we kick London out, it's a whole negative thing, it's all IMG's fault.
Kevin says, don't understand why we couldn't help Cumbria with some funding, more potential in Cumbria than London. It'd be great if we didn't waste our money on things like crowdfunding for Hunslet's medals or Mark Aston's appeal and stuff, and spent it on more important things that are tangible.
I'm pretty sure all the Cumbrian clubs get central distribution. I mean, Whitehaven seem to spend it all on signing Australians and Papua New Guineans. So
and
you can argue whether that's or not paying them. You can argue whether that's an appropriate use of resources or not, but that's a different argument.
Paul said, junior game is starting to struggle in London. Plenty of players who transfer from Rugby Union to Rugby League for the summer, but teams are getting more distant. Games are normally over 1 hour's travel. It's like going to Wigan every week.
Or twice in a week.
Or twice in a weekend.
So I can answer that question from a long time. It's the nature of the beast having to travel and make a short.
It's a big city, yeah.
Big city and
10 million people.
Bigger than Wakefield. What?
I've got a very strong view on the Rugby Union Rugby League thing. If we are seen as a summer activity for Rugby Union players, often with pushy parents, we're wasting our time. And I'm talking about establishing these clubs with primaries, juniors. Rugby League first has to be the mantra. And we have to look after the people who want to play rugby league in the way that cricket looks after cricketers, etc. We can't be this, what am I going to do on Saturdays or Sundays now? Because the moment rugby union starts again, and their season's getting longer and their pre-season starts earlier, we lose. And there's a hardcore of rugby league folk down there, and we've got to grow more, but we can't do it overnight. It's going to take, my view is Medway Dragons is about to enter its 18th year. The first cycle of Medway Dragons will end in year 30, when players who started when they were 5, 6, 7 are coming back 30 years later with their kids having had a good time at that age, and that's the reality of what you've got to do if you want a strong culture to build on.
James, we're at that time of year where the RFL people, the laws committee, how many people are on that shadowy cabal of people, decide to change all the rules? That's coming up soon, is it? Do you know anything?
So.
Do you know anything?
No,
would you change anything?
I think there's discussion around the video referee system and how it operates in the NRL, and adopting the live referral system. So the referee, if the referee believes it's a try, would just award the try, and then it would automatically be reviewed, so you wouldn't have a delay. But if he thinks it's no try, it would go up as no try, and the game would be stopped at that point. So I think that would have been an improvement, because I think you'd have less stoppage in the game.
Captain's challenge.
They're looking at captain's challenge. I think that probably will come in. I think the challenge will be, though, pardon the pun, is that you've got games without the same number of cameras. So you've got some games that are 6 camera games, are they? Others got the full suite, and then you've got games in France. And best of luck to the video referee with the French.
It's going to be a bit like the cricket, where if there aren't enough cameras, you can say, well, you can keep your review. That's all right.
If it was a decision going against Catalan, you'd do well to get a replay, and certainly get it how you wanted it. And so there will be flaws in the system, because it's not a bunker system like they have in the NRL. It's easy to say we want what they have in the NRL, but they want it on a shoestring, as is often rugby league, isn't it, over here? So who knows in terms of laws of the game. I think there's things that do need changing. I think that, some of the issues we saw around players staying down needs looking at again. The green card needs looking at again. One of the problems is that the match officials don't have sufficient input into that laws committee, in my opinion.
Well, that'd be kind of quite. Seeing as you have to go out, I know you don't do it anymore, but seeing as you go out there and have to apply these laws to real
referees
world
have
situations.
very little input to the laws of the game.
Well, that's a bit
the laws
stupid.
committee.
That's a bit.
So it's a collection of a whole host of people, which will include
people from the media,
club chairman, media, and frankly people that, without being disrespectful, that don't understand the implications of law changes or how they're then policed. So some will better than others, but others won't. And so for me, it's great, it's consultative and people have input, but some of the issues that we've had this year, I predicted at the start of this year because of what had gone on. So yeah, for me, I think there should be greater consultation with the people that are out there applying them.
It was great to see Samoa not blame Liam Moore yesterday. They were
Well, I think they were fortunate.
As opposed in the World Club Challenge, where it was all Liam Moore's fault that Wigan were world champion.
I think they were fortunate to get to the beginning of the second half before being put on a warning for the rucks, to be honest. I thought they deliberately tried to slow the game down, and it didn't work for them, did they? Because every time they conceded a penalty or a 6 again early doors, they conceded a try. So, the fact that they tidied that up in the second half, I thought improved the spectacle. I don't think we'll see that again this coming Saturday. It didn't work for them, did it?
Were you surprised how bad their discipline was?
Not necessarily, no. I think some touring teams have an opinion of English referees that they're not as good as the NRL counterparts, and they think they can probably push a little bit more in the ruck, and they certainly did do that, but they didn't get much joy, did they?
No.
I thought England were dominant in their performance, to be honest, but listening to snippets on the way here, and I don't know exactly what Sean Wayne said. I think there was a reference that that wouldn't beat Australia, and I would totally agree. For me, they didn't kill Samoa off. They never killed Samoa off in that game, even though they were dominant in the game. And for me, Samoa really shouldn't have been within touching distance. And at 16-6 at half time, for me, it just didn't reflect the first half at all.
I think most of that was down to Luai, though, kept them in the game.
It was two intercepts as well, though. I mean, you take that out, and then the Mariner try, which was probably undefendable. It was freakish. Yeah, I think to me the game looked over after 18 minutes. It's 16-0. I mean, England, as you said, James, I think they were utterly dominant. They barely made a mistake, and they really took their opportunities when they arrived.
Even I said England weren't as dominant on the scoreboard at half time as they should have been. So I mean, bloody hell, if I'm getting things right.
I have a view on match officials in both the running game and the wheelchair game. I think they've been absolutely outstanding. Chris Kendall did a fantastic job in a fantastic grand final, and I thought Liam Moore was very good on Sunday, and the wheelchair match officials were outstanding in a fierce game. There's something going on with it. I think there's a real confidence within the teams, and you know they're there, but they're not influencing outcomes of games in a negative way, where people are walking away and or coaches are questioning things. Well done, match officials, going real well.
This can't last, this positivity. We've been too positive for the last few weeks on this programme. I don't know what's going wrong. We need to find something to moan about.
Although I would say that I'd be interested to see what the fitness test standards is for match officials in wheelchair. I'm tongue in cheek here, but it's great to see some of the faces back involved actually refereeing. So I saw Paul Ward's now refereeing wheelchair, and he was obviously out on the field himself a number of years ago. And so it's great that people are getting back involved in officiating and staying involved in the game.
Well, I discussed it with Phil Bentham. coincidentally sat next to him at the Hall of Fame dinner.
Right.
And I've agreed that the England team will go to the match officials pre-season camp with all our chairs, and we're going to get the guys in, and we're going to bash them. It's your chance to bash them. But we'll teach them how to play as well.
I think some of the refs would really enjoy that.
Oh, they will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But Phil said, he's looked at it and knows that he can't do it because it's a completely different. You can't run around the field and get in a position. And if you do go on the field, you're going to lose your ankles. So he was intrigued about, and he wants to get involved in the role he has. But I'm quite excited about getting some of the guys you're invited to, James. Perhaps you might like to referee this game. So
I'd have absolutely no idea, even less idea than I was refereeing the running game.
That is the one thing I'm thinking of. I do need to learn the rules. I can't just keep going to games and just pretending to win.
Although I did think it was interesting the interview you did with, who was it, Martin from last week? Norris, yeah. About the two-hand, that in his opinion it should be a one-hand grab for the tag. I don't know what the laws actually are. Are you allowed to go two hands to grab a tag? But he was basically saying people are pushing with one hand and grabbing a tag with the other, and so you should only be able to grab the tag with one.
So the laws of the game are that a tackle is affected by removal of a tag at that point, or you can have an upright tackle if people are not going anywhere, or if they're not making progress and they raise one or both arms, that's a surrender tackle. Right. So we're trying to keep it in this way.
Oh, I'm glad you told me that. If I ever play, that's what I'll do.
That's just normal rugby league, slowing down a ruck, isn't it? The same as you do in touch. You make the touch and you put your hand back because you slow the momentum of them when to play the ball.
Can't get that tag off.
Regardless of what variant I imagine,
So I have
little inches.
I have this privilege of being at the cutting edge of it, and we now have something within the England team which has caused people are astonished. We have something called chair wrestle. So in the running game, you'll make the collision, you'll stop the forward momentum, then we'll have a bit of a squeeze for a while, whilst you're looking around for the defence to get set. Then we'll go to ground. If it's dominant, the match official will give you a couple more seconds. We're doing exactly the same in wheelchair.
You're going to ruin it.
We'll stop the forward momentum.
Have you got Michael Maguire coming in next week?
He's been in for a while. We stop the forward momentum. You then reach and get the tag, and then with your chair, you'll try to move their chair, so it's not at 90 degrees to the touchline. So they have to reset their chair.
Don't listen, James. Go straight.
We're slowing down the play the ball, which is what every coach wants. Is
and the super velcro. Some teams have super velcro that the tags don't come off.
So, a bit of the old sticky.
I know Martin very well. This is the same in every sport in the world. Coaches are going to push and pull and see.
Little 1%ers. Yep.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to let the coaches go. We talk about the laws. We had a big laws review after the World Cup.
Were the referees involved?
Yes.
The French referees. French linesman.
James loves that referee. He loved that referee. Yeah. Oh.
That's because he's got flair, that's why.
People still talk about that. I know it's not what people should talk about after that World Cup final, but people still remember that. They haven't forgotten that match official.
So his name's Laurent Ariel. I know him, and he's refereeing in France now, despite the international ban.
We saw him when the bloke nearly got run over. Yeah, that was good.
So I can so I feel for him. Internally with the French, that they created this siege mentality. The English are violent. The English are not playing fair. The English wheel certain players out in anthem jackets to sing the national anthem. They're not playing. None of which was true. But it was a sort of coaching thing. So this guy's there, listening to his colleagues and these terrible people in England, and we've invaded for the World Cup, and it's all not fair. He's a human, and when your leaders of your country's team are saying all these things all the time, I'm not saying it was right for 1 minute. And what I would say is Ollie Cruikshank on the other side, who was hammered for being an English person in the French rugby league circles until somebody pointed out he's Scottish. And it was like,
it's close. That's close.
And he disliked the English.
So it could have overshadowed. I just think it added to it.
Of course it did.
And it was one of sport's great occasions. People strangely say, "Did you enjoy that?" And No, not really, personally. But again, so this year is the first year, I'm absolutely certain of this, that the match officials know more about the laws of the game and how to apply them than the players. Because it's such a new sport. And something would happen, and the players who've been driving the game up to this point would look at the match official and say something, and they'd go, shit, you know, what are the laws in this thing? Whereas now, including Paul, and we got some really good card of 8 to 10 match officials who know more than the players and are now managing the game.
I think that's
just like the running game. The players don't have a clue what's
I think you can see that almost from the outside looking in. You can see people that really enjoy officiating wheelchair, and they can see it almost now as a pathway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I don't know if Kevin was confused because he said, "How can the wheelchair game was on at the same time as the running game?" It wasn't. It was on Saturday, but it was on the iPlayer rather than normal telly, quote unquote. But it has been repeated twice because it was repeated yesterday on the red button after the England Samoa game.
Didn't understand why Ireland and Scotland played at the same time as England and Samoa was on. That seemed to be self-defeating.
So did you tag amateurish rugby league into that?
So if you do want to see me and Phil behind the goal chatting to people, then do watch the iPlayer.
Ireland and Scotland played in England.
It's close enough to Scotland, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was partly to. I mean, when Scotland played in the World Cup, they played most of their games in the North East or Cumbria. So I think the offer from Gateshead was too good to turn down, and they wanted it. They wanted it to help promote rugby league in the North East, and it's the nearest you get to Scotland. I just don't know why they didn't kick off maybe at 5 o'clock on Sunday. I'm sure somebody will send us a very good reason, but to me sometimes that's where we get it wrong.
Speaking to Wales Rugby League today, I mean, I think one of their aims is for Wales to play in Wales every year.
Yeah,
obviously they played in Neath.
They've got a stake in the Knoll now, haven't they? At Neath. I think that is now where they're going to play all of their games in Wales.
I think that should be the aim, that nations should be playing in their country.
But the great thing is
that
we all thought that by diminishing the number of teams in the World Cup, that international rugby league would fall off a cliff. But more games are being organised, and Wales playing Jamaica on a Tuesday in the Knoll and selling out all of the corporate hospitality. That's a fantastic move forward.
France 74, Ukraine 8. How are Ukraine playing international sport when they're at war?
Well, the other thing about that is,
I don't want to say,
I watched some of that on a live feed, and at least half of the crowd were Ukrainian fans, and the 2 tries that they scored got by far the biggest and best reaction. It was obvious they were going to be beaten by a almost fully professional French team, but the experience that they've got and who they were representing, the message they were able to put over, and the fact that there are so many, or the sufficient refugees in that part of the south of France to go along and support them, was again a wonderful occasion for rugby league.
Is there a Ukrainian quarter of Sydney? Because every other country.
Nathan Cleary's got a Ukrainian grandmother.
Well, David Nofaluma and Nick Kotrich playing for Serbia.
Yeah, David Nofaluma, who's played for Samoa.
But great that they would want to again, play. John Asiata said it this week, didn't it? If you get the chance to play for more than one nation, you should. And if heritage means that much to you, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was fantastic for Samoa.
One of the best players in the world.
So I think that Kotrich, hasn't even yet played for Catalan Dragons, is playing for Serbia. It's fantastic.
And a great story from Wheelchair Rugby League is the Ireland team that's been competing on and off, up and down, but participated in the World Cup, I think with one Irish player, as in Irish domiciled player, but the rest of them have been heritage. Next week, this weekend coming, is the first ever Leinster versus Munster Wheelchair Rugby League game. So this work has done, and it's now spread into Ireland. Support with sporting bodies, it's fantastic, and I'm happy to share with you that I've have an understanding with Spain that we will go there next September with an England team as part of a rugby festival in Valencia. We're going to send some players and coaches out on a couple of weekends beforehand. So the Spanish team we're playing in Nantes in November are all Catalans with correct heritage and can legitimately play, but the Spanish want to grow their own and have a competition. So it's really exciting. This missionary work is going on.
I'm going to have to get my passport sorted online.
Told you that.
Since I'm in Spain all the
Just
time.
because you don't need one for Wigan.
I keep forgetting I'm on
Work in Spain.
I keep forgetting that. Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
Radio stuff.
I know. I keep forgetting that I'm doing that. On your list of things, was there anything else important you wanted to mention?
Oh, there was a fairly big case involving Sheffield Eagles and Mark Aston.
You're right.
I don't know if you want to involve that minefield of legal.
I don't know what we can say other than he's been banned, and I don't like.
I think
this.
There's a bit more we could say. Yeah,
but I don't like this insinuation that somehow the RFL should change the rules on head injuries when there are obvious reasons why they've brought in rules on head injuries and stuff. And I don't know anything. None of us have been party to the whole case.
But you can read the notes.
Oh, can we?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Oh. I mean, I'm not going to go do that, so I don't even know why I said that.
It's only about 1,000 words.
I've got.
Come on, John, tell us.
That's less than my.
I have read them. I have made a few notes, but I don't want to bore everyone. But I think there are definite conclusions that you can go from the case. I think the situation, it just looks bad from every angle. I mean, there's some strong criticism of how the RFL's handled their investigator. I think it was interviewing Mark Aston when he didn't even know he'd been charged. You know, there was some sort of process issues there. I think the pressure that was allegedly put on the doctor at Sheffield and that the club didn't really, the head of performance and everyone else didn't really act. I think, obviously, Mark Aston, has given everything to Sheffield for I don't know how many decades. The club and him are kind of synonymous. So it is quite sad how it's panned out. And I think he generally does have the welfare of his players in mind. And all his players have come out, including Matty Marsh. But, as you know, with these concussion rules and the idea is that players need to be protected from themselves. Mm-hmm. He hadn't passed the right protocols. Doing a bit of contact with your brother in a field in Hull, it's not the same. And when you read all that, you're just like, is this an amateur sport? Like, I know that the championship is not filled with money, and but it doesn't, from everyone involved, including the RFL, it just doesn't look good. Yeah, it's a bit of a, it's just not a good look. But I think the RFL had to act here because we know how serious concussion, head trauma is, and we can't have players who've failed tests then playing, whatever it was, however many days later.
13 days.
So, yeah, and I think the quote, I think in the tribunal, the notes that we'll deal with the consequences later. I mean, that's a pretty galling thing to say. Whether you want to beat Wigan on a Challenge Cup tie that you ain't going to win anyway.
Well, that's the daftest thing about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I not that I can.
I don't think. Yeah,
I don't say I can understand it if you did it in a game which you think you're going to win as important as your season, because that sounds wrong as well. But I can understand the logic there. There's no logic in doing it against the best team in the world, because they're the world champions. So it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens with any potential appeals and what comes from those, won't it? So, can of worms.
Again, this is a rugby fan point of view. I read an article in The Guardian that rugby union considers itself to be in really serious trouble at the bottom end of the game.
I read that article, yeah.
And they're introducing a non-contact form of rugby union to schools because teachers don't want to play. The teachers have been frightened for a long time because of collapsing scrums and their liability. Now we've got the head thing coming in as well. And parents of young children are saying, you're not playing this game. Mm. So I think we all have to sort of take responsibility, and the world has changed, and the badge of honour of getting up after you've been knocked out and being, considered you're in. You can do this like the toughest of us can. We're just got to get beyond that now, and you're right about the welfare of the players is the most important thing in the game.
Just to add to that, and I think this came out last week in the Daily Mail in Australia. Someone referred it to me. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of. Happened 4 years ago, but a Manly Sea Eagles player, 20-year-old Keith Titmus, he died. He had a cardiac arrest during a very strenuous training session, but and which that's a completely different issue. But they have done an autopsy, and his brain had early signs of CTE. He's 20 years old. I mean, I think you think CTE, you think it'll be the it'll be the 40-year-old retired, which is not any better. But when I think then the realisation that people can have this condition at that age, then we do need to be very serious and hand out bans for people who aren't following protocols. And I think, as you said, getting kids to play is a big task, but it's also convincing the parents that the game is safe and that we're doing the right things to make it safe.
The game will always evolve. And people talking earlier on this season, the game's dying.
Yeah,
I'm not
every week the game's dying.
It's still here.
I'm not going to renew my season ticket, and yet there's 67,000, whatever it is, at Old Trafford. The game's not dying. The game won't die because the laws change around head contact. The game will just evolve.
Yeah.
I know it's a different situation, but Dean Richards has been welcomed back into rugby union, hasn't he? And he was banned for the Bloodgate cheating scandal. So one day when Mark Aston's ban is up, if his appeal fails, he's a good coach. Someone will employ him again. It's just another one of those avoidable messes that seems to happen, and then everyone writes letters to League Express and gets upset about it. Like getting upset that they renamed the Harry Sunderland Trophy, and then, as it turns out, everything works out fine in the end. Because generally things do. Well, some things. Wheelchair Premier League. What was that? You mentioned that earlier.
Yep. The plan, we opened up for invitations, have to be in by the end of November. We've given people, and it's not grading, but it is a governance standard of what's expected around player welfare, around facilities, coaching qualifications, etc. It's not pass or fail. We've just given people what the expectations are. We'll consider all of it. So the existing clubs are required to apply, be nominally for 3 years. And we'll say we do want to expand. So the thoughts are 8 teams, you play each other once in a first 7 rounds. Some teams will get 4 away and 3 home and vice versa. We'll then split the league in half. You may have heard of this idea before.
Scottish Premiership.
Middle eights.
Well, there's no middles, sorry. They're just the top 4 and the bottom 4. And that will be, if you like, a playoff system where the top 2 after that period will go into a grand final. So every club will get 10 games. If you go to the grand final, you get 10 games, which is about enough. We'll also have things like Challenge Cup and Fours competitions, etc. And that's the plan.
So is that to replace Super League or as well as, or
it's to evolve Super League to up to the next thing? And so we think Hull are a great example. Hull were getting bashed every week. Hull are now. I think they got 3 points this year and push Leeds really close and
they were 1 win off the playoffs.
Correct. So I'm not suggesting Hull will be in the bottom half, but if the clubs that come in are the bottom 4 have a chance of winning 3 of the games in the first part of the season and then 3 of the games in the second half of the season, and we may have some cricket scores when they play the Leeds and the Wigans and the Halifax great teams. But it'll help us grow the game. And this aspiration of mine of sort of regional hubs where we go perhaps in winter. So Phil knows very well about this. Phil is part of a group of people whom we're discussing a concept which we have named Wheelchair Rugby Premier League, which the plan is 4 teams made up with perhaps 1 or 2 Australians, 1 or 2 French, some of those may be women, 3 or 4 English League players in a short format of the game. So think the 100 at cricket with rock and roll and fireworks and flashing lights.
Stocks.
Indoor fireworks, be careful.
In an arena broadcast, terrestrial television. We know we've got the product. We know we've got the greatest athletes of the world, and if we spice it up with, and it doesn't have to be just Australians. If there's a great New Zealander discovered next week, Americans, Spaniards, won't this be great? We can attract this. We're not attaching it to existing clubs, so there'll be Southern Suns, Midlands, Jaguars.
Like the 100.
Yeah. Just like that. They'll be playing in certain colours. There'll be a draft. The coaches will be the charismatic and good coaches. So I think Gilles from France and Tom Coyd and perhaps Cyril from France.
It's sort of the IPL, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the RFL's new marketing head used to work on 100, so
very, very
he should know. Yeah, he should know.
And we're looking to do this in winter 26, which goes back to your earlier point. and the mission is that both disabled and non-disabled, all ages, but young people would say, I want to play this game. Mm. Where's my local club? And if we've got one in Bristol or somewhere in the West Country, that's where you go and you learn to play wheelchair rugby league.
And it's a product that the broadcasters are more desperate for than just more of the same, which I think is really important. That the initiative comes down from, right, well, you've seen this, you love it, what would get you more involved? Well, can you give us something different? And maybe that's where the reimagining of the running game has come to a bit of a halt, that we've got sort of grading, but why, does the game look any different? Probably not. Is it going to look any different in the immediate future? Probably not. This concept is something completely different, so you could go outside of any broadcast agreement and say, what about this as an idea? And wheelchair can do that, which is why it's so exciting.
So it's part of it is stealing the best ideas. So referees in black and white vertical striped shirts with a microphone, and they can talk during the game so the crowd can hear it and understand why this person is off for 5 minutes and being pelted with fruit in some sort of punishment.
Referees already get accused of hogging the line.
Well, it's like watching that. If the London Halifax semi-final where we could hear everything David Butler said, it was that a trial, an accidental trial?
No, he's just a very loud man. So.
To be fair, something like that where you go to a sport that you don't understand the sport and it's something new, and then you can. For me, I think when you see a new sport, you have to understand the sport in order to get it. You know, you can appreciate it for what it is, the physicality. But for me, anyway, probably because I was a referee, I need to understand at least the basics of what's happening in front of me.
So every rugby league club and every rugby league fan in the UK and abroad is absolutely welcome, but they're not who we're aiming for. We want to reach a new mark in it, and the obvious one is rugby union, because they'll recognise an oval ball being passed backwards and kicked
which of course isn't in wheelchair rugby, where you can just chuck it around. And
it's interesting the name you gave. You said wheelchair rugby Premier League.
Correct.
So the league comes at the end, not after the word rugby.
Correct. So there is a sport called wheelchair rugby with round balls that you bounce and you chuck forwards. Yeah. Ours resembles everything about rugby.
How do we get John's newspaper to commission him to write more about wheelchair rugby league? How do we increase the interest levels, the clicks?
Well, I think the clicks are there. John will know the answer to the question better than me, but I promise you the material is there and the characters are there, and it's very attractive now, and if we can make it more attractive, and the Wheelchair Rugby Premier League will be a short burst, and we're thinking January, so it's before Formula 1, it's before Six Nations Rugby. Soccer has a bit of a strange period when it's the early rounds of the FA Cup. There's
international weekend kind of, there's usually one in January.
Yeah, there's no rugby league or anything like that. So
I think having clear air is a big part of that, and I think actually breaking it apart from the men's and women's game.
Yeah.
Because they fall into the same kind of cycle, and the women's game doesn't get as much coverage because everyone's covering the men's, and it's a bit of a vicious cycle.
And the wheelchair grand final this year being the day after the men's grand final, lost in the.
I mean.
I know there would have been a very.
The whole window for rugby league is terribly small.
We're talking about a niche within a niche.
Yeah, but if you have it on the day before, the day after, any preview material is going to be focused on the men's. That's just
I think the other exciting thing about this concept is that it would be over 2 weekends with a midweek game.
Yep.
So the whole thing would be finished within a maximum of 8 days. So you get to know the teams, you get to know the. You can imagine if it develops, it may not happen in year one, but if it is a draft system and you're starting to get to know the players a little bit more, that's an event in itself. So 2 weeks, 3 weeks before,
and we can pick it up and drop it in Madrid, or Paris or New York.
And you would think that a Sky Sports News might be tempted for 10 minutes to do
Madison Square Garden.
I think the ECB might have spent £100 million on the 100. I mean, that obviously. No, but I think having some sort
£100 million, Martin,
for Madison Square Garden. Listen, I learned today on Radio 5 actually, the Wiggles sold this out 26 times.
Wiggles are huge. Huge.
Australia's greatest export, apart from John.
So if they can do it 26 times, we can do it once.
The orange Wiggle, big West Tigers fan.
Yeah.
Huge West Tigers fan.
We can involve him.
Yeah.
And we'll have Ozzy Osbourne and Kylie Minogue and
is he permanently depressed, the orange Wiggle? I'm
sure he should be. Yeah. Apart from 2005, it's been a few years. Yeah.
Was there anything else we're going to? Have we done everything?
I don't. John comes up with an agenda. We never have.
I know we've done it. We've done an hour and 40 minutes.
Have we? Yeah. We got any more guests?
Yeah, you keep going out the door. Yeah.
Paul wants a QR code with a link to the rule, link to the video of the rules. That's another thing that we've got to make. Well, we haven't. It's not ours.
This for wheelchair.
I'm assuming so.
The laws. If you go to the IRL website, they're there. International Rugby League.
I'm gonna have to go on a course. I don't want to be a referee. I've done that. That part of my life is long gone. But I'm gonna have to learn them because
they're the same. So everything that's 10 metres in the running game is 4 in rugby league. We don't have scrums. We just have a turnover. But all the things you would think of: surrender tackle, upright tackle, forward pass, knock on, offside, scoring, 80 minutes is virtually the same.
Sembashara's try.
Yeah.
If he hadn't been pushed, that wouldn't have been a try because you're not allowed to dive over.
It's really interesting. So we had a couple of moments during this laws committee after the World Cup where the French referee disallowed a Jack Brown try, where Jack was knocked out of his chair but reached backwards and scored. Now, it shouldn't have been a penalty. That was making up the rules as you go along. It should have been held, play the ball, because he came out of his chair there. So if you're knocked out of your chair accidentally, or if it's foul play, obviously it's a penalty. But if you're knocked out of your chair and it happens, it's a play the ball where you got knocked out of the chair, carry on. So we talked about it, and the player, if you are, so what you can't do is dive. You can't do a Noah Faluma. You can't dive from miles out. But if you are in the act of scoring, and you're knocked and you go forward, it's a try. I happen to know that the part of the review afterwards was, what would you have done had he not scored? The answer would have been consideration of a penalty try, certainly a penalty, and the reason is he wasn't attempting to remove the tag. So it's almost like a shoulder charge from the side when a player's about to score, and he may have got 5 minutes in the bin. So we've changed that because wheelchair rugby league, the intensity in 5v4 is an overlap in every play, so we dropped it down to, and sending off now a red card, you're out of the game for 5 minutes, but then another player can come back on, because we don't want a World Cup final with 75 minutes of overlap every play. So
depends if England are in.
So these are the minor modifications, but the principles are the same. So the answer to your question is the same principles as the running game.
Oh, I don't know the rules of that. So.
I think there's one last question I've got for Phil. Okay. So one of your former columnists sacked, and then one of your, shall we say, idols, friends, replacing him at Castleford, someone who you saw him play, 4,000 times live. What's your take on that? And also,
I thought you were talking about Paul Wood in Swinton.
No. And that was great timing by Swinton to release that just before England kick off against Samoa, so no one would talk about
didn't know. But also interesting that I'm sure Danny Maguire last year didn't want the job.
No, I think he feels that. And I would speak on his behalf that he's now done enough as an assistant coach to be ready to be a head coach. I thought the timing, we sort of mentioned it on the show last week, was really unfair to Craig Lingard. Clearly, Castleford had an idea that they were going to be grade A and safe, and a new owner came in and they wanted to be seen to put in their own stamp on the club, and I think Craig has expressed that really eloquently, that is the state of the game, and he has no ill feeling to anybody. I think Danny's realised as well that you don't get that many opportunities to be a head coach.
True.
It's also a club that's very close to where he lives, so it sort of fits in. The opportunity to bring his great friend Brett Delaney in, who has a fantastic oversight of defensive play.
Done a great job at Hull County.
Yeah, but I think they work really well together, because one is attack based, the other is defensive disciplines. I think it was just too good an opportunity for him to turn down at this stage. It'd be very interesting to see the recruitment, because the question would always be, well, if Craig Lingard had been given this recruitment or these players, what would it have been like? And the way I feel sorry for Craig, which is not in any way to undermine, hopefully, the job that Danny will do, is that we never got to see what he could be. He was given a brief. The brief was, you got no money. We're putting all of the eggs into the off-field basket to make sure that we become a grade A club. Can you make us credible? I think when you look at predictions early in the season, you'd have said, would Castleford be anything other than 10th? That would have been
I think he did a fair job with what he was given, yeah.
He brought some players through who overperformed, I think, given the fact that it was a very inexperienced squad. A lot of it culled from Queensland or New South Wales Rugby League. Got the best out of the guys he had. Gave the fans enough to cheer for them to stick with a club that knew they weren't going to get anywhere near the playoffs. And then to be dispensed with almost 2 days before their new grading came out just seemed a bit harsh on Craig. But that's no reflection on Danny. The owner clearly thinks that Danny has the contacts and the ability to take them to the next level, and I hope he can, because he is a top guy.
Does Scott Morrell stay?
He is at the moment. He was linked with the Halifax job before they made the slightly bizarre appointment, which again, no disrespect to Kyle Eastman, but if you'd been to the bookies and said, can you give me a list of people who might be the next Halifax coach?
You think their priority would be sorting out the winding up petition and paying their tax bill and their rent bill?
Again, I can see it, because it sort of works for both parties, that if Kyle Eastman wants a chance to be a head coach, there's going to be very limited playing expectation, because all of the other things that you've said about establishing them as a viable business will take precedent. It's almost like Castleford of Super League this year. It's like, we do need some performance points, but maybe not this year. So you want to be a coach, we need somebody who can come in, and if you prove yourself and you go on to bigger and better things, we're happy with that. But we'll give you an opportunity, because what we won't be expecting you to do is win the championship next year. So it could work. But again, I thought Scott might have been earmarked to go to Halifax, but he hasn't been mentioned, so you would hope that he's got a role to play at Castleford.
John asked earlier how far away from a wheelchair series against New Zealand, is that something? Because they are a bit behind us.
I don't know if you mean the same thing. So wheelchair Ashes is happening next year.
Yeah, but is it happening over here now that they're coming here, or is it going to be over there?
Well, there has been some dialogue this morning around it. My view is the purpose of us going there this year is to prepare to defend the World Cup, and we want to go and play in Sydney and learn. I want my team to be bored with Sydney.
Where will you play in Sydney? Do you know where?
I don't know, but we've asked if the World Cup venues are known, can we play in them? One of them.
I would imagine maybe the Olympic precinct, because there's a lot of indoor facilities that we use in the Olympics. And,
so we played in a place called Whitlam in Liverpool. We're definitely going to Canberra this year on missionary work, taking a leaf from Samoa, who did a great job, I'm told, with an open training session at York.
Will you be going to Canberra Cathedral and singing like they did at York Minster?
I don't think there's a cathedral.
It's not a cathedral.
There's a big lake. There's a big Parliament House.
Is it
I'm
not
not
very
sure
religious
your
place?
voice can sing. Because we heard the anthem on...
as long as they don't go to Canberra for the beach, then that's alright.
It was passionate. I'm not sure it was in tune.
It's not in tune, and it wasn't loud enough, so there's some action to take on it being louder next time. So I'll encourage them to sing louder next time when we're in Spain.
Because they love God Save the King in Australia, so
it's our king too, apparently.
So,
for some reason.
Stupid it is. To answer the question from our viewer, Ashes tour next year. New Zealand would have to be competitive, but the Aussies have gone out there with a missionary mindset. They're playing 2 games in Auckland, and will leave some legacy behind, and I'm sure we'll cross the ditch, as they call it. And it's in everybody's interest that we can get Southern Hemisphere, Pacific wheelchair rugby league going, and there's no reason why this game cannot go global. For Argentina and South Africa, I know they've got disabled people. I'm not sure there's anything going on in the world of, go back to James's question, identify it as wheelchair rugby. We'll know what it is because it's going to play the ball. So yes is the answer to that question in due course.
James, anything you want to say before we finish?
No, I don't think.
Because you've not been on for ages, so I feel like I should leave you to say something.
No,
your shirt. We haven't seen you since you were presented with your heritage number.
Yeah, I still need to find out what the gold star means.
I think you probably did.
Best boy.
I think that's one Champions League, isn't it?
Well, I did.
One Champions League you've won.
Like
Yeah.
How many grand finals did you do?
One as a referee.
World Cup.
That'll be it.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Wakefield made his debut at Bellevue.
I know, but they've put but it should say.
Go on.
They won, yeah. I mean, I can't remember this.
Not many they would under me, but they won.
No wonder Castle I've never liked.
But it should say Wakefield Trinity Wildcats because that's what we was.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But you've got Bellevue on your shirt.
Yeah, that's true. No, it was a
I mean,
good.
it's probably
it was
called
a
the
surprise actually. I didn't
Atlantic
realise I was going for that to be presented with my heritage number.
It's like This Is Your Life. You turn up and say, James Child, rugby league referee. I can't do Eamon Andrews. Eamon Andrews, there's one for the teenagers.
I would just say, just on the grand final, it was great, and it was fantastic that the referees weren't talked about, and it was a great performance by the officials. But equally, it's by and large down to the players, because the players just got on with it. If players played like that every week, it would be a dream for a referee, and that's a dream for Chris to just be able to sit back and let the game just unfold.
And the ball was in play for so long that again,
I was stood behind.
Almost take a back seat when there's so much going on at any given.
I mean, it was the opposite to the Challenge Cup final where he had to intervene with sin bins early on in the game. Which is a bit of a nightmare for a referee in a final. But it was a dream really for Chris to be able to just sit back and let the game unfold.
You have to be fit though at the end of the season to have a game where it's non-stop. I mean, it's bad enough for the players, but what about match officials?
Yeah, I think they had a VO2 max test the week before the final or something. So, yeah,
it's a good job they don't do that for podcasting. I wonder if the media were tested before. I mean, probably drugs and alcohol testing with some.
Sorry,
bit harsh. Thanks, Martin, for coming in.
Pleasure. I've been promising Phil for years, so I'm on my way to Newcastle, so I'm just popping in on the way.
I think we'd ask
now you've seen the magic.
Yeah,
I have seen.
You see our new LED light? That's the IMG effect. It doesn't really.
Is that for your OnlyFans?
Yeah. I wonder how much Ashley Gibson makes in OnlyFans. Those pictures he posts on the Twitter, where he's makes you question things. James, when are you going to be back?
Why did you lip jump to me?
Because I just said hello to Martin and then you're there. I said hello.
When am I back? I don't know when I'm back.
But you'll be back.
I don't even know at 5:30 whether I'm here at 6 o'clock. So
he just heard the words "there is cake."
Cake. Have you had any cake yet?
I have.
Good.
It's beautiful.
John, you'll be back at some point, won't you? Because
probably
when you're back.
Holidays, yeah.
Special celebrity guest on the programme next week. She said she's coming on anyway, didn't she? So you were there. But unfortunately, all the stuff that we spoke about on the way to Wigan yesterday won't be on the show. But now I'm going to tell everyone about it. So let me find. Where's Ronnie? Is this Ronnie? No, it's not Ronnie. Can you see Ronnie on the
I certainly can't. My eyes
I'm so far away, I can't see it.
knock everything over. Where's something else says Ronnie? This is a good end to the programme, isn't it?
Particularly for